I think there's an assumption that Carmen is a Spanish opera because it's set in Spain and has some Spanish rhythms, but that's far from the truth. It's a French opera from the first bar to the last. It has Spanish-infused rhythms and Spanish elements within his orchestration and a supposed Spanish theme, but it's really nothing to do with Spain. It's got about as much to do with Spain as Aida has to do with Egypt. So once you've made that decision and that's been answered, then what is it then? Well, I think it's very important to realise that the biggest influence on the structure of the piece and the musical language of the first half of the opera is Offenbach. It's hard for us to even understand now the influence this man had. The opera is not an opera. It was written for the opera comique. This means that there is spoken dialogue. This means the music stops, the music starts, the music stops, and then there's dialogue between. This is very, very important because the piece is such an extraordinary milestone in the history of French opera because it starts as one thing. It starts as a very light, funny, ironic, almost Offenbach-influenced variété revue, influenced by chanson and the operetta world of Paris, and then veers in the third and fourth act into verismo, into what later would explode across the European opera stages as this sort of music theatre realism. So the piece starts off as something and then ends up as something completely different. And I think that I've tried to serve that in the production because I think there is a misunderstanding that the opera or the musical landscape of the opera is loud and brutal and Spanish and whatever. It's not. It's light and ironic, and it's much more to do with the French articulation of sound in the theatre than it is to do with a Mediterranean or Latino-Mediterranean landscape. I like playing with the objectivity and subjectivity of the audience, that they are sometimes removed from the action through the narration, and sometimes are absolutely sucked into the emotional drama. So you're constantly being propelled in different directions, and I think it helps the piece enormously. I think also that it's much more interesting to see verismo develop out of a revue than verismo to be sort of placed in a sort of realistic setting. And remember that this is just the beginning of this whole verismo moment. So I'm not interested in presenting, if I was doing Cavaliere Rusticano, Pagliaccio, or the Puccini operas, you have to have a certain amount of realism on the stage. And in this particular production, I'm not interested at all in that. What I'm interested in is the reality of the emotional landscape and the truthfulness of the emotional interruptions and explosions and confrontations. That's what makes the piece so interesting. The rest of it's just accessories, the bullfighting and whatever. We know that metaphor, but you can't overplay it. And you have to let the audience dream their own dreams. I think any opera production should be very articulated by the team and the performers, but I always like leaving space for the audience to make up their own minds. And people always say to me, what did you want, Barry? What did you mean by that, Barry? And I go, what did you feel? What did you think? It's not that I want to not do my work, but I want to leave, the theatre as a dream space. You have to be able to project your own imagination onto something.